This is dessert. It is my great pleasure to introduce my dear friend, Randy Weingarten. She is, as what was that guy's name who was secretary? Mike Pompeo said, she's the most dangerous person in the world. Let me just say that I agree with him. But knowing the most dangerous person in the world, I thought, how can we get Governor Tim Walz here? Randy did it.
Like everyone in this room, who can say no to Diane?
Right.
So I get the honor of introducing the governor, who I have known for quite a long time. But I just want to say to all of you before I introduce him, oh my God, thank you for this room and for this conference and for all of you. It's been quite a few weeks. And there is 4 words that I have said to our activists that I never want to hear them say, which is, and I'm going to ask you to never say it either, which is, I told you so. Out of your vocabulary. And the reason is because there is a shift that is now happening.
Yes.
There's a shift.
Yes.
And like every single one of you who know what it means in a classroom to meet our kids where they are, and that it's not just what's said, it's what's heard and felt, right? Those are the 2 lessons that teachers told me before I walked into my first classroom, and I never have forgotten it. And it applies as well to adults, maybe more so than to young people. It's shifting. And I think it's shifting not just because of the meltdown on Wall Street, of which there's going to be a lot of economic uncertainty in the next few weeks, kind of juxtaposed with the president playing golf. With all this uncertainty.
Right.
But I think it's shifting because of what we all do in classrooms in America. Because of the following. Just this week, think about that little ditty that went out this week that said, different than the Dear Colleague letter from February 14th. It was kind of, no, we really mean the Dear Colleague letter from February 14th, and what we're going to do is make every single school system in America sign a certification that says that you're going to do this. So it's not only that the underlying act is illegal, but it's everything else is illegal, but then if you sign the certification, all of a sudden you're lying if you break not the law, but their edict, because the law is on our side. Did you get what I just said? So, but think about it. Just the bullying from last week, the extortion tactics from last week, the eliminating, they say they're going to eliminate everything that says or promotes diversity, equity, inclusion. Think about what they are saying. So if you or a librarian or a reading specialist uses a book that the president doesn't like, is all your Title I money going to go bye-bye? If a school in June celebrates Juneteenth or even Jewish Heritage Month, does that mean you're going to lose all of Title I? Or if those those of you, like me, are history teachers, and you happen to teach something, like, I don't know, Jim Crow? Does that mean we're going to lose all of IDEA and all of Title I and everything else? They are essentially trying to erase all the progress, not just some of the progress, but all the progress of the last 60 years. Everything. You know this. And you also know that with every bit of crap that's been thrown at us, sorry, there's no kids here, right? Sorry.
He's heard it before. Oh, Lord. That's sweet. That's sweet.
It's this wealth redistribution.
Yes.
It's this undermining of knowledge. It's this, as they attack us as indoctrinators. You know who the indoctrinators are. They are afraid of critical thinking.
Right.
They're afraid of empathy.
Yep.
They're afraid of problem solving.
Right.
They're afraid of public schooling. But my point is this. It's shifting. It's not just that the polling says, even though people didn't know what the Department of Education did. I mean, how many times we have to say, no, they do not run schools. States and local entities run schools, not the department, right? But even without that, over 60% of people said, no, don't do that. Don't take that away. Why? Because what does that say about a nation when one of the first things a president does is to say, we're abolishing the federal role in education?
Amen.
You don't need to know much about what it does. And yes, of course it could be more efficient. And yes, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have standardized testing ruling everything? So maybe when we have the new bill back, we can do something different. You know, we can maybe focus on safe and welcoming schools and making sure that things are engaging and relevant. Maybe when we get there. But we have to get there. And that's what, in introducing the governor, I want to just say to you. Anyone who has studied autocracy understands that what they're trying to do is bully people into silence. To basically say,
It's true.
we can't do anything. What's going to happen?
Yeah. It's
We're
true.
going to hide under a rock. We'll just go into our personal lives. And that's what autocrats count on. They count on that. They count on it. And so I'm asking you, the activists in this room, kind of follow the lead of our next speaker. He put himself out there to run for Vice President of the United States of America. I mean, that's pretty awesome that you did that. It's not easy to be thrown the crap that gets thrown at him, and that was thrown.
Yeah.
The undermining of a son and a daughter,
Oh,
the
my
things that were
goodness.
said,
My.
the smearing, the divisiveness. There's something shifting. People are coming together.
Amen.
I saw this on March 4th when we did an action to fight against the cuts. 2,000 AFT-related events all throughout the country. We've never, as a union, had that many events on that day for the same thing, to protect our kids. Never. And then yesterday, I know you were all here doing God's work. I can invoke God, Reverend, right?
Yes, you can, sister.
My wife would be very proud of me. But the notion, look at yesterday, millions of people on the streets.
Yeah.
Millions. Just saying, no, don't take Social Security, don't take Medicare and Medicaid, don't take our schools that 90% of our kids go to. Hands off. Hands off, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's not just don't give up. Don't be silent. Be the activists you are. Be the teachers you are. Join with others in community. Yes, we'll fight in the courts, but the court of public opinion is frankly much more important.
Amen.
That means the kind of education you do in classrooms, the kind of connecting the dots, we have to do that on the streets as well.
Yes.
We gotta do the teach-ins. We have to go to school boards. We have to bring people together because people do not want what Trump is doing to this country.
That's right.
People do not want democracy.
That's right.
They do not want tyranny.
That's
The
right.
founders of this country knew
Come on.
it's
Come
going
on.
to this country, and they want that.
Amen.
And we need to connect the
Amen.
people.
Amen.
We need to know this room, NPE. We need to do that. One of the people who's doing that all over is the governor of Minnesota. And for those of you who don't know him, who are not from, let me see if I said it right, Minnesota. Did I kind of get it from a New Yorker? Or do I need some help, some support? This is a governor who is a teacher. Who is a teacher. This is a governor who taught the Holocaust and helped his kids figure out what genocide actually really meant. This is a governor who started with his wife. He was the social studies teacher. His wife was the English teacher. One was a member of the, because we are a merged state in Minnesota. One was a member of the NEA local. One was a member of the AFT. They merged together too. But he was a high school football coach and started with his wife Gwen the first gay-straight alliance in the school. Woo! He spent decades in the Army National Guard and then won as a congressperson from a deep red district as a Democrat in Minnesota. He made sure that in the deepest, darkest days after the recessions of the mid-2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever we got to, he made sure that Minnesota, kids in Minnesota, didn't get shamed for being poor, but got food in their classrooms and their schools. He made sure he took those teacher values, those parent values, and fought every day as governor in Minnesota to make sure that schools in Minnesota are places that parents want to send their kids, that educators want to teach, and that kids thrive. He understands what it means to have a special needs kid. He understands what it means to bring people together. And since that November, he's dusted himself off, and he's out there every single day fighting the fight for hope over fear.
Amen.
For aspiration over anger, for community over chaos, for us to have that more perfect union, to go and deal with those weird people. And to move forward as a place in America that is about everyone, that counts everyone in, and that is the country that we ought to be. My honor to introduce you to Governor Tim Walz.
Good afternoon.
That's how old I was. Before last summer, I got confused with Brad Pitt a lot, and now he is aging like milk here. And I did say this, just to put things into comparisons. I could finish out my second term here as governor and serve 4 more full terms and be younger than Donald Trump. Well, I served with Mike Pompeo in the House, and I have to say today might be the one day I would agree with him on one thing. If you were a want-to-be dictator, Randy Weingarten is the most dangerous person. I would say that. Now, if you happen to be a child or a parent or someone who actually cares about others, she is your best friend and your strongest voice. Randy Weingarten, I like this. People are like, you won't acknowledge the president. I acknowledge my president every day, Randy Weingarten. Always be my president. And to the folks, to Diane Ravitch and the folks at the Network for Public Education, Diane, as you in this room know, you're here, self-selected, is a giant in this and has tackled some of the hardest issues. I heard something today, one of the teammate that's been with me, one of my longest, my deputy chief of staff, Patrick, mentioned today when he was in his second year in a classroom, he picked up and was recommended the death and life of the great American school system and said it was transformational for him, and he has been working for public education on my team in Congress and in the governor's office for the last 15 years. So, Diane, your reach is to the elected officials who are here, really grateful that you'd be here. We got folks from all over. Don't we have a Texas representative here? I'll tell this story. I was in Fort Bend County last week, a kind of red spot north of Houston or whatever, and on kind of a rainy afternoon, and a place where they had never done town halls, and their representative said it doesn't matter, and 3,000 Texans showed up and navigated Houston traffic. That is a commitment. So,
Yes.
So thank you to all that, and great to be in Ohio, and in full disclosure, the football side of me is very envious. Never close the yearbook. I always remind people we won a state football championship, and they would say, was it in Ohio? No, well, it doesn't count. I did say to my team, we were coming over here, the most Minnesota thing. I'm like, oh my God, grass is green in Columbus. Like, beautiful cherry blossom trees are growing on that. And I said the very Minnesota thing, I said, well, it is as far south as Omaha. So that's like my geography thing about the deep south. Look, we got snow today, it's snowing today. And so I was like, oh, putting things into perspective, Columbus, Ohio is the deep south in summer for Minnesota. But to each and every one of you, I truly mean it. It's a Sunday afternoon, you're busy. You've got many things going on in life, and you chose to be at a conference that I would make the case very few rooms would be more important, because I agree with Randy that this is foundational. The rest of the things that we're talking about will be very difficult. It'll be very difficult to convince people about infectious diseases and protocols following the science of peer-reviewed literature if we don't have an educated population.
Amen.
Because then I ran against a guy who was a doctor, you know, that I think gargled pork paste, ivermectin, and we had, true story, in 22, and was running to get the litter boxes out of the vegetables. That stuff sticks when we're not out there teaching it. So I said we own this, and I'm gonna come back to this theme a little bit with you, owning that we damn sure should have won an election, because we didn't. We're in a hell of a pickle right now. Yeah. And the teacher in me knows that if you got a big chunk of your class not getting a lesson, maybe you ought to differentiate your approach to it. Maybe you ought to develop it. Come on. That's not a condemnation. I got asked after this last election, you know, like it's like a gotcha question. Would you have done anything different? Like, you know, they want you to like narc out somebody or something like that. I'm like, well, we would have won. I'd have done that differently. And since we did win, I'm gonna extrapolate from that. There's some things that could have gone differently. And I think we're at a real risk if the shiny objects and things that are going on we lose sight of the real core of what they're doing. And for you in this room, I would argue that you're right about this. The core of public education, which is the great American contribution to the world, I think. It's the great American equalizer, if you would. It's the great American dream comes from that you can get this with a recognition. We all don't start at the same starting line. That is a ridiculous proposition, and that somehow acknowledging that is giving a hit. I was on this morning and did the Sunday talk shows, which I know better of. You gotta go do it. They've been asked done that. And they're like, had a clip of me in Texas where somebody asked about, they were asking about, the attacks on DEI, and I said, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they were talking about immigration. I said, well, we can't give up on those things. And so Fox News was like, oh, he's doubling down on DEI, and that's what they got beat. Well, your definition of DEI is racist and misogynistic. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a recognition that even in a state like Minnesota with high achievements, our gap between black and white students is absolutely abysmal and should be an absolute stain on the soul of all of us. And that's why we're working to make sure that, guess what you need to do? Put a few more resources into those areas.
Amen.
Or better yet, make the profession lucrative enough and say, you know what, we're going to have to put a little bit of extra money in here, and we need to make sure that we get teachers in front of these kids that look like them and have their shared life experiences. I started out, I got my undergraduate degree from Chadron State College, Harvard of the Midwest. It's so freaking interesting for the Republicans that, this elitism or whatever. They attacked me for attending public high school, public university, and sending my kids to public schools. And they made jokes about this. He went to Chadron State, and he went to Yale and Harvard. It's on that. We're the goddamn Harvard of the Midwest out there in Chadron, and we do the best we can. But the point being is I got a quality education specifically focused on teaching. The old normal schools, the teacher school, and worked into it. An incredible job. That school produced wonderful teachers, which I'm very proud of. And that was not only a path for me into a profession in the middle class, it's one that everyone else could enter into. And so I did that. I did my master's work in experiential education at a time when teachers could experiment and do things and team teach with the theater coach and do some really creative things rather than being tied into there. And again, not us, not the local school board, but the Republicans wanting to push things in that was their agenda. Again, you all know this, and I keep saying, I'm going to use this line. I know it's in this room, it's preaching to the choir. The choir needs to sing louder.
Yes.
The choir needs to sing louder. That's what's happening. You're here doing this, and Randy said it about being engaged. I said this, I'm 41 years old, and I voted. Now I'll be friggin' fact-checked against Donald Trump's lies.
No kidding.
Not only is he a stolen valor guy after doing 24 years, he's trying to say he's younger. Look at him. The idea of how we are trying to message and trying to make a difference for people, and I think I didn't want to have to do this. I grew up in a time where I wanted to do my job and do these things, and I felt like when the folks in this room, and I know you're coming from administration, teaching, or whatever, if you're actively engaged in your school, you are damn busy. There is not time for one damn thing. My wife and I, when we were coaching, we were working on the play. She was doing speech and debate. We built the prom. We were taking students on trips in the summers. You do those things. You're actively engaged. And I think as teachers, we always underestimate ourselves. That's where that line comes from. I found out now is don't ever underestimate a public school teacher because you're doing every damn job in the world. And you're accepting all the things that are coming. I know you're busy. I know it's Sunday afternoon. I know you've got them. I know you have all the other things. And in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to be spending all this time. I thought one of my strongest lines on the campaign to convince people to vote for us was, I said, look, if for no other reason vote for us, you won't have to see this guy's face on TV or and you won't hear from us every day because we don't have some weird psychological need to have people see us on TV every single day. But I didn't want to have to do it. But you know what? And I hear this from people all the time, and especially now, because part of it is to teach apathy, to drive people under, to not have people engaged. They want to do that, and I hear from people, oh, I'm just not that into politics. Well, too damn bad politics is into you. So you're keep going. And I think for many of us, is that this is there. I got this whole thing right now, I'll just tell all of you, we're getting on. Who's leading the Democratic Party? And I got on there and they asked me this. I said, hell if I know, Seriously. I said, but that's not really how we act on this. I said, I will tell you is, you could ask every person who identifies as a Republican who the leader of the party is, and they will fall all over themselves and kiss boots and butts and say Donald Trump. That's it. I said, that's not how we're acting. So I said, if you want to know who I think the leader of the Democratic Party is right now, just go out on the streets. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
They're out there.
All right.
Saying, all right. And we're looking for organization. And I always view that the way it should be is a little more like the old mountain climbing expeditions, when they would go to Everest, you would go as a team, and who was ever ready on summit day, you would push to the top, and the entire team would get credit for doing that. I think there needs to be a little more of that, because I'm here to tell you, and I was glad to see the other day President Obama said a very similar thing is, if you're waiting for some charismatic figure to roll in and save the day, we're screwed.
Yeah.
We are screwed. It's going to happen when you saw out there, and behaviors will change. And you know what type of behaviors? You will see folks who should be standing up for public education and who truly believe it, finding a louder voice and doing more things. And those who are voting against it will crawl under their damn rock and hide the best they can, because they know they can't defend it. Because the kids and the parents and everyone who knows how this thing works knows, as hard as they've tried over the last decades, and they did it to our sisters and brothers in nursing. They, how horrible it was during, those people were risking their lives every single day. And look, we are kindred professions in this, very, very closely aligned. But guess what? When you poll people, the two most respected professions are nursing and teaching. Now, for some of you in here, they do disaggregate that data. It's actually elementary school teachers are higher. Will admit it, I did 4th grade and I knew I was a better 10th grade teacher than a 4th grade teacher. But the point being is, now is the time. And look, we're in precarious times. I think I want to be very careful. It is whistling past the graveyard time. I said it a while back, and people are like, oh, I don't know, you're scaring people too much, because I think you're overreacting, Governor. I said, the road to authoritarianism is littered with people telling you you're overreacting. Trust me, you're not overreacting. You're not overreacting. And so it brings it back to this idea of public education and standing up for education. And us being, look, I was proud to be on that ticket and I knew what my mission was. I thought this was a great thing. First, since 1980, the first person on a national ticket, either Democrats or Republicans, since 1980, that wasn't a lawyer. And I'm proud of being a teacher in that, but because I'm a Minnesotan too, there's a passive-aggressive shade at lawyers in that too. So, there you go, a little bit of that. But really the first public school teacher, and again, I thought this was a flex, and it was not, because I am a public school teacher. When I first ran for Congress, they're like, let me get this straight. You've never run for anything before. No, and you're not engaged in the political process other than voting. No, not really. I'm 41. What do you do for a living? I'm a teacher. You don't have any money. I said, I just said that. I'm a teacher. And you're going to run for Congress. And I didn't really know any better than one Democrat since 1892. But it wasn't about running for that. It was about a bunch of people around saying we need to have a voice there. And that was the first time it kind of dawned on me. Look, I think teachers by nature, we know our jobs. We're very self-reflective. You cannot supervise a lunchroom without being self-reflective. Is this suit really that ugly? You become really self-conscious and a little bit of imposter syndrome in there or whatever. But I quickly figured out that idea of a voice, and that statistic I gave you about nobody being on the ticket was really reflective. And then I think we get to the heart of another matter in this. I thought this was a flex on the ticket. The Wall Street Journal did an analysis of my financial statement, which took them about 30 seconds. And just to be clear on this, that I am really proud. My team will tell you this, I'm obsessive. I have an 850 credit score, and, you know, that's a big, you know, like 3 people that have that, and I'm like really excited. But they said, this is the least wealthy person who's ever run for vice president. The reason I thought that was a flex was, I felt that was a mirror to most of us. That I'm not least wealthy, I'm in the middle class, and then this is my theory on this, and I should talk to people smarter than me, like Randy and Diane. I said this morning. Donald Trump's magic in what he did, if you want to call it that, black magic or whatever it was, but I would argue this, he identified the angst people are feeling. In 1985, I think the average age of first home ownership was 26, it's now pushing 40. Less than half the public has $1,000 in savings. Many of us are one sickness away or losing our job or losing health care. We're worried about trying to figure out how we're going to get our kids through college at the same time my 89-year-old mom still taking care of herself, but what's going to happen there? Those are all real things. And he talked about it to him and told him what a terrible thing it was. Now, not telling them, he's the damn reason they're in that point. He's not going to do anything about it. But what did they hear from us that was different? And I heard somebody I was with this week, and I love this, how we talk to people or whatever. All of us know, and my big passion is making sure that people don't go hungry. We have universal breakfast and lunch. We have a child tax credit. Lowest child poverty rate. But we do say things like food insecurity. No, they're hungry as shit. That's what they're talking about. They're hungry. And you know people. You know them, you know kids. The parents are going hungry, so the kids not, and things like that. That's real in America.
It is.
It's an absolute. It should never happen in the richest country. But you've seen the numbers, the shift of wealth, what you heard Randy talking about. I agree. Senator Sanders out there talking about this. I don't think we should use oligarchy. Greedy bastards is better. I'm serious. Greedy, because we're okay with success. We're okay. You're teaching your children, your kids, and you want our public schools to be good so that they can achieve a level of economic independence and participate in it. That's fine. Because you know why? You care about them. You're an altruistic person. You want them to have their best. But I also said we should be honest with ourselves. As a teacher of this, I worked my butt off to see that they got the best education. But there was a little bit in it for me. I wanted them to get a good job so they could pay their taxes and I could collect my Social Security check at some point. That's how the economy works. You build in the strength, you build out the middle class, you build wealth. That's been shrinking. Most countries around the world do have very, very wealthy people. And then they got a whole bunch of folks just trying to get by and very little in the middle. The middle class of America was built by the public education system in labor.
Amen.
Those two things coupled together, and now we've lost the ability of people to be able to talk about that. Do we have good allies that get this? Yes, we have good allies who get this, but I'm just going to be a little bit self-righteous about this one. I think it helps that you were on that school board or in that classroom or went to that public school or whatever. Am I trying to exclude folks? Look, we've got some billionaires on our side that I would say when it comes time to eat the billionaires, don't eat them. Don't eat them. They're okay. But we need to acknowledge that we've got an economic system that is not a fair market system. And it's not moral capitalism. I believe in it. But you have guardrails around it. You have things that make it different. Many countries around the world do this. And there's nothing wrong with being, this idea they use patriotic. I would say proud of your country. If you're truly proud of your country, you're willing to tell the whole story. Amen. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Amen.
And that's the only way you're going to get to where it goes. So, as you think about the moment we're in, and I do think, again, the not whistling past the graveyard, it's going to get worse, people. Yeah. It's going to get worse. Yeah. But there's going to be an inverse reaction to this. As it gets worse, it's going to get louder. And there's going to be more people rise up that are going to say, look, I never in a million years planned my life to end up where I was. Again, I was 41 at the time, had never gone to a political meeting, hadn't done this. And the next thing I know, vice presidential candidate on there. And it was really crazy for me because I'd go to these rallies and they would bring like Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, and I'm like there trying to get a selfie and get some and they're like, you're the candidate. Oh yeah, that's right. But I think there is a sense of servant leadership that comes out of these jobs, this sense of public education, that our strength, and I think it scares them. I'm with Randy Weinberg. She just told me this. Honest to God, she just told me this. I had a town hall over in Wisconsin, which, by the way, we kicked the crap out of the building. But I said, and this is where I get in trouble, I guess, a little bit, but I'm going to say and just speak what it is. I said, I think one of the goals to undermining public education is to keep the public uninformed so they can do their crazy crap.
That's
and take advantage of it.
That's right.
And do I blow your secret if I tell them you got a book coming? All right, I won't tell them. This theory, though, about the importance on a broader scale of a society that's fair, that's better, that's healthier, that is a force for good, versus one where they get us into this chase for false scarcity all the time. There's not a scarcity, and that's the biggest myth that's been perpetuated on us, and we keep like fighting for crumbs. And then they've been masterful of having those of us who are trying to fight for crumbs in the middle punch down on those who would just take a single crumb. And then all of a sudden, they're the problem on this. So that's the thing that we, and I say we, all of us, I don't know what your political ideology is, because I'm telling you, what's out on the streets and what's showing up at these town halls is not about Democrat and Republican, it's about democracy versus autocracy. It's a shift of wealth to the point of forcing poverty on others. And we have to be, as teachers, figure out the messaging better. I always talk about this, especially when they get us caught in these things on expanding of rights. You know, what difference does it make to you what clothes someone's wearing or where they go? I am now 61 years old today. I have probably used tens of thousands of public restrooms, and I quite honestly don't know the person next to me what exactly is going on. I don't care. But you know what I do care about? The statistics shows that little trans children have a higher rate of suicide and abuse than almost any other. How can we not figure out to say, okay, you've got an issue here, we'll talk about it, but we're not going to make somebody's life more miserable, and we're sure the hell in the midst of a presidential campaign talking about an issue that's impacting most people no way possible, but it's impacting some people very profoundly for no other reason than to demonize them. We as teachers got to be able to deliver that unit a little bit better so that 80% of the public clearly gets this. And then with the recognition, don't get me wrong about this, I think we're winning hearts and minds. I think if you ask them about women's reproductive rights, well, I don't know. We live in a state where you make your own healthcare decisions in Minnesota. We live in a state where you're protected in your own identity of where you're at. That's not true across the country, but I can tell you, Ohio or other places, the vast majority of people believe women should be making their own healthcare decisions. They believe that you should probably do a background check, and if you are unstable, you should not have a firearm. They believe that. So we've won the hearts and minds. They've won power and did what they were going to do anyway. Why do you think he talks about this massive mandate he got? And I own this. My job was to be, you know, the old white guy whisperer, you know. You don't have to hate on that little kid because it makes no damn difference in your life, but they're going to screw you in your 401k. That's why you should vote for us. That was kind of the message. It didn't work in enough places, but the impact of it is going to be felt. Now, structurally, how do we, and I think you're seeing it out there, how do we make the case and bring in the folks? Because again, if you ask people, you know the polling on this. What do you think when they do this? Randy knows this, they frame it. What do you think of the teachers union? Well, they spent billions of dollars trying to make it look bad, and people still really like them, by the way. But you take it down, what do you think about your local school? It's even a little higher. What do you think about your child's teacher? Oh my God, gets even higher. And we have to tell the stories. That's what we're doing in Minnesota. It is not enough for me to say, 2 days ago, we had to let go 170 infectious disease experts at one of the best public health systems in the country. And we have to continue those. You know how good they were? That the measure, my take on this is, if you wanna measure what happened during COVID, just go look how many people died per capita in each state, and you'll know who did it better. I'm very proud that my state is one of those that had the fewest people that died during COVID, and it's because we had the infrastructure there. So you need to go back to people on every single thing they do. We need to engage our parents. We need to engage our communities who care about this, and we need to be able to talk better. Randy said it, I'm the one who said this. We all went hair on fire that they were getting rid of the Department of Education, rightfully so. And I would go ask people, I don't even know what the hell they do. I never heard what they do. And then they had done masterfully is, yeah, they're the ones pushing the woke agenda. They're the ones pushing teacher trainings. They're the ones that doing the DEI, and, all of this or whatever. I said, they're doing none of those things. They're ensuring the law is followed so that my son, who has an IEP, gets what we all believe as a nation is every child should get an equal opportunity to So look, Randy invited me here and said it was with Diane, which I came and I knew it'd be my birthday because this is good for my soul too. I'm trying to, I don't know if it's good for yours, it's good for mine. But I said this, in full disclosure, I said, when Randy Roengarten asked me to do something, I do it. So I said, I'm glad you didn't send me to Fairbanks, Alaska, because I would be in Fairbanks, Alaska today. But in all seriousness, when I've known about Diane's work, I've not been with any of you. You are a unique group of folks who I think have a unique voice at this point in time. I think we are underestimating where the massive change will come from. It'll come around defending Social Security. It's important. That's going to be a big one. That's going to be a big win. It'll be a big win around Medicare, defending that. Probably a big win that we shouldn't go to open combat with Canada. I think that's going to be. Well, I'm up there. I have relationships with them. I think they're having me up in Toronto next week because they're thinking about an 11th province, not a 50th state. These guys seem okay, They're cold, they play hockey, they're not insane. Come on over. But as you get out and as we think about what it is, I believe the core issue is going to come back. This sense of what does it mean to give a child an opportunity at a better future?
Yes.
What does the American dream really look like, and how do you achieve that?
Amen.
There is no way you can have that discussion or frame up what that's going to look like without centering it on the public schools and the support around that.
That's right.
And I think that's what you've all known for decades, as
That's
I said.
right.
I think now is probably our moment, that maybe more so than it's ever been, because it is an existential fight for life or death. And again, being that lunchroom survivor, eternal optimist, they are going to destroy these agencies. They are going to destroy the safety nets that protect us through IDEA, which I don't even, you can't even make some of it up anymore. The day they interviewed the new education secretary and they asked her about it, she didn't know what it was. I made the equivalent. That's like going to a mechanic and them not knowing how to put air in your tires. And, she should have just picked up a chair and hit someone. That's her profession. That's what she's trained for. Look, nothing wrong with that. If that's your strength, go with it. Do the best you can. But it's not being an educational leader. But they're going to do it. And this is going to get pretty bad. My directions to my team in Minnesota is, we protect the most vulnerable and we protect our gains.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard because they're going to attack all the things they're going to try to. And look, those who care about these things, we are by nature independent thinkers. It is truly herding cats. That's what we do. That's our strength. But in moments of crisis, we need to line the cats up pretty tight. And we need to march together in a way that you're seeing.
Yes.
That is out there to push back. But here's what I think the over the horizon looks like. The Department of Education and the destruction of it and the civil rights branch in there is all horrific, and it's going to have lasting consequences. But it does open up the possibility, when we not only win hearts and minds, but when we win back the power to do something, let's finally build these things back in a way that they need to be built. I deal with this in agencies, and I'll use the ACA around this. I was very proud, and these people aren't going to the town halls, by the way. I'm gonna stand on my damn laurels on this. I was a new member of Congress, as I said, from a Republican district, and the Tea Party movement in 2009 and 2010 was about the ACA. And I remember standing in front of thousands, angry, about the ACA for hours on end and take their questions. And I did it. The one reason I did it was I was proud of the work we were doing to try and expand healthcare to more people. And I was certainly willing to go back to teaching school if it meant more people had healthcare, to stand there and do that. And we fought hard. And then we negotiated with the Republicans. And then we compromised. And now what we have is the ACA, which is better than what we had, but it still is crap in terms of healthcare and how you can get things done. And it protects pre-existing conditions, but you still have to deal with your damn insurance company that can deny you. You still have to deal with prices that are too high. You still have to deal with all of the out-of-network stuff when you cut your finger off with a chainsaw or something, which happens more often than you think in Minnesota. So why are we afraid, and why are we going to settle with, and I think we've done this because it's the nature of a democracy, these agencies that matter so much, we've kind of cobbled together these Frankenstein monsters and put a few more bolts on their neck or whatever. Well, they wiped it out. And so when it comes back, let's get the right type of agency, the right type of agency. And so it gives us a goal to shoot for. We've got the experts in the room. The country needs you now more than ever. You've got a voice that is respected. They are going to open up the window for us to do this because they are so damn dumb that they will continue to do these things that they've done with tariffs. They'll continue to try and make this up. I said this morning, and this is true. This is the dude who just got stuck in the 80s on all of his thinking, and he does it the same way every time. My wife says, it was the one day in class he was listening and they were talking about tariffs. But he wasn't listening closely enough that they were talking that they were bad. So he picked up, I heard about tariffs at Wharton when I was there one day, and I'm gonna do this. He's got statements out there where he talked about nuclear war wouldn't be that bad. So we're probably, I guess, at this point. But look, this stuff's gonna continue to come. It is not late night talk show fodder that a father was sent to an El Salvadorian hellhole. They say it's an error, but because they are just so goddamn evil, they won't admit it and bring him back. They're leaving him there. And for all of us, we should be able to say that, and then when they respond, well, that's because you want murderers here to murder our, who are, no, we don't want them here, but he's not one, so that's a stupid argument, and you need to shut your pie hole about it. Don't get into it. Don't get into it. No one is saying that we should allow criminals to come here. What we're saying is, why don't you put the resources in to make it easier for people to come here legally, and then when they pay their taxes, and then embrace them into this beautiful tapestry that's America. That's not woke, that's our history. That's how we do things.
Right.
And so for all of you, you saw it work last week. You saw folks get organized. Just 4 months ago, Donald Trump won Wisconsin. Last week, no matter what they did and how much President Musk showed up. I know there's a child here, so I will never take back what I call that. But last week, by the way, I was making a list of this. You know we're doing something. These are the people that criticized me on here. 2 Fox News hosts, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Caitlyn Jenner, a 7-foot professional wrestler from Tennessee who wants to fight me, and Ron DeSantis who wants to promote that fight for charity. They don't know how much joy that brought to my heart. I have never been so happy in my life. But privileged to be with you. I think, and I know it's hard, and I want everybody in here who's dealing with it. We can't lose our sense of who we are together. I do think you have to laugh at some point or time, or you're just gonna cry, because I'm doom scrolling through my whole TikTok goes puppy videos. Look at those huskies howl when they're all together. That's how I get myself like through the day. But as I did make a little joke about, I also have the Tesla stock sticker on there. And look, I don't take pleasure in someone else's pain, but this guy is destroying what makes this country great. He's attacking the greatest anti-poverty program the world has ever seen in Social Security. And they're going at what I consider was the lifeblood for me and my family and millions of Americans through generations. Incredible public schools, a little town of 500 people in Butte. 24 kids in my class, 12 were cousins. And I had the best public school teachers. I had Ed Pebble as a government teacher and laid the groundwork. I think, you know, he couldn't be more surprised if he woke up with his head stapled to the carpet that I was a vice presidential candidate. But that little town could educate our kids. You think if we go to vouchers, there's gonna be a private school in Butte, Nebraska? You think those kids there that have a poverty rate that's higher than a lot of the country are gonna go somewhere? It didn't matter. What we knew was, we walked through the doors of those schools and we all got a quality education. They set us all up for life.
Amen.
And that happened across the country. That's what they're going after.
Amen.
And we need to make those stories. We need to get out and make the case. We need to make sure that everybody's thinking of that best moment, that best teacher, and just take on the lies, because the public's with us.
Yeah.
History's with us.
Yes.
For God's sakes, morality's with us.
Right. Right.
And if a 7-foot wrestler's against us, that's all right. So thank you to them, Diane, thank you, Randy, thank you.